Arbitrary. Welcome everyone to another belated edition of Drunk Agile. Bit of a hiatus there. Prateek decided he wanted to take the summer off, so we're just getting back into it. With me as always is Prateek, but we can't.
Oh, well, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Hey Nisha. Hey sweetie. She acknowledged me. That's a win.
Some things have changed. Some things have actually changed.
That's a win. I'm going to count that. Prateek here as well. Prateek, what are you drinking?
Today is the Elijah Craig Battleproof. It's a 62.4%. I had posted a picture of the bar earlier, and people had recommended Blanton's and Glentornac, but when I looked at it, I kind of went, So we might make this a little more interactive. We were just talking about it.
Because that's what we do here at Drunk Agile. We ignore all customer feedback, right? Just we're not going to listen to it all.
Why not?
Yeah, why even bother?
Why even bother?
I'm just drinking a nondescript old fashioned. I think it's Buffalo Trace, but But so cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, yeah.
Cheers. I'm going to kick off tonight's topic, and I'm going to hand it over to Prateek, and he's just going to talk about cricket the whole time. So I'm just going to apologize right now for those of you who don't understand anything about cricket. Actually, I'm hoping he won't. But following up on the last couple of episodes that we've done with this whole idea of variation, and what is signal versus what is noise, and how to detect signal versus how to detect noise. And we had a flood of comments come in because one of the examples we gave, I know it's been so long, one of the examples we gave was this whole idea of what happens when what happens if a scrum team were to finish or were able to hit their goal on, say, the fourth day of the sprint, or when the first PBI finishes, or whatever. What is that scrum team supposed to do? And we got, like I said, we got a flood of responses. I think 4, which is a flood for us, talking about how that is a failure of estimation, how that is a failure of planning, how that is a failure of consistency, and that, essentially, I don't want to put words in these people's mouths, but essentially blaming the team for doing Scrum badly in that case. So Prateek, can you talk about that? And we're going to try and tie this in, because believe it or not, there's a tie-in to this whole signal versus noise thing that we will get to. But so Prateek, can you kick us off and talk to, well, I guess just say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go. So what's interesting about this for me is in all of Agile, Lean, whatever, our focus has always been, can we shorten the feedback loop? Can we make things smaller so we can get things done faster, get results faster, get feedback faster? And for some reason, we have latched onto this thing of, well, if a sprint length is 3 weeks, the goal has to last 3 weeks. Instead of looking at this goal and going, can we break this down into smaller goals that can be achieved faster and we can move on to the next goal? We've latched onto this. Now, I've talked to a few Scrum trainers, and at least one Scrum trainer has at least said to me that I'm totally cool with a team finishing a goal and then starting the next goal and starting the next goal within the same sprint. Now, I don't know if that's Scrum or not, but for the most part, we hear exactly what Dan was saying. We hear exactly the thing of that was something wrong that the team did. They got done early.
So we're gonna have a little contest here. We're gonna count the number of times that Dan says arbitrary tonight, because this episode is going to be brought to you by the word arbitrary. Because
you just figured out the title of the episode.
And I'm not. I know it sounds like I'm denigrating Scrum, and I kind of am. But the whole idea of a sprint length is completely 100%, no doubt about it, arbitrary, right? When a team, the Scrum guide just says, hey, 1 month or less. that's arbitrary, right? It says, it says nothing about your particular context. It says nothing about your particular capability of your process. It just says, hey, pick something in 1 month or less. Why 1 month? Because that's what's in the, that's what's in the Scrum Guide. That's what we say. Because 1 month is better than 2 months. I think the Scrum Guide actually even says, and even err on the side of less than 1 month or whatever. But no matter how you slice it, it is 100% arbitrary. So if you are able to hit your goal, say you're doing a 2-week sprint, and you're able to hit your sprint goal on the 4th day of the sprint, if you go back to our previous episodes about variation and signal versus noise, that is not signal. That's your arbitrary target was 14 days. The fact that you got it in 4 days is not signal. That's not a signal that something bad happened in your process. What you're doing is you're ascribing a judgment call based again on a completely arbitrary definition of a time box. Help me out here before I say arbitrary again. Arbitrary.
What's worse is if you're taking action on it, you're literally doing what Stewart said is a mistake. It's the second, you're literally tampering. If you're taking action on something that's not a signal, that's by definition tampering. You're tampering with your process.
Hopefully Phil is watching. Every time we say tampering, we take a drink. Take a drink.
Oh, arbitrary tampering. That's the name of the episode.
Okay.
But that's what's happening. We're arbitrarily tampering. It's the Dan said I'll talk about cricket, so I have to talk about cricket. The way cricket works, for those of you who don't know it, is a one-side bat first sets up a target. That's essentially your sprint planning, your sprint goal, and say, hey, you have to score 300 runs or points, let's say, in the next whatever 300 deliveries or whatever it is, 300 pitches to make it easier for Americans who are used to baseball to understand that. Then the other side goes in and says, okay, this is my target. So let's say that's your Scrum team. This is my target. If you achieve that in 200 pitches, you have won. Game's over. Great. We'll see you next day and play the next game. It's not that, oh, we achieved it, but that was a mistake on our part. It's actually counted as a good thing, not a bad thing. It was not a mistake that I achieved the target sooner. And I know people can probably come up with a whole different bunch of examples, but the point is exactly what Dan was making, which is just because we have chosen a sprint length does not mean that every goal has to exactly fit that sprint length. There's going to be variability. That variability is a good thing. It's a thing that just happens, not a thing that the universe is conspiring against you.
Yeah. We need to come back because I want to follow on what you said. Somebody remind me. We need to come back and talk about how time boxes hide the probabilistic nature of the world and actually are kind of the antithesis of variation. I need to come, or maybe that's the next episode or something like that. I don't know.
Am I supposed to remember all of that?
All of that.
Okay.
But to follow what Prateek is saying, to put more of a kind of a lean or flow lens on this, the whole idea of a target like this, the again arbitrary definition of a time box, that's akin to the voice of the customer. That's just somebody somewhere setting some specification that says, hey, we want this, right? What we from a predictability perspective, what we really care about, however, is the voice of the process. What is our process telling us? Now, if those two things are misaligned, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It will be up to you to decide in your context, is that a bad thing? And if that is a bad thing, you've got 3 choices, right? You can change your target, change your specification, you can change your process, or you can do both, right? But just the fact that you are not hitting your time boxes, I would argue, is not evidence enough to say, oh, our process is all wrong. Let's go off the rails and let's change our process.
Yeah, there are 2 things that I'm anticipating already from the viewers, so I'm going to jump into those straight away. First is Scrum allows you to deliver whenever you want. It totally does. You can continuously keep delivering. We are not talking about that. We're talking about the sprint goal. We're talking about achieving the goal. So we completely agree. You can deliver whenever you want, but we're talking about the sprint goal. And the second bit is uh, a lot of people will say the good thing about the time box is that it helps teams be focused. For the period of time, we're focused. Frankly, if you have a sprint goal, that should be the thing focusing you. It's not the time box, it's the goal that's actually the focus. Because even in the Scrum Guide, it will tell you every day we inspect progress towards the sprint goal and figure out what we're going to do in the next day to make progress towards the sprint goal. It's the goal that's focusing you, not the time box. The time box is, as I've heard someone say, arbitrary. It's it's an arbitrary thing. It's a goal that's focusing you. And once you're done with that goal, great. Let's focus on the next goal. We do not need to let the time box decide when we focus on the next goal or consider it as the problem if we achieved our goals early. Most of the time, you achieve your goals early. That's a good thing.
And I guess to even clarify your clarification, when we talk, again, we're not saying that Scrum is necessarily bad by setting a time box, although that might be the topic for the next conversation for the next. What we're saying is the interpretation that if you haven't hit your time box, whether you finish before, or we haven't even talked about the other, where
Yeah.
is if you don't hit your goal, our time box expired and we didn't hit our goal again, therefore there's something wrong with our process. That's what we're talking about. The interpretation of you didn't exactly hit your time box, interpreting that as signal. That's what we're saying is incorrect based on our talk about variability. Just so everybody, just so we're handing out lumps all over here. Flow teams aren't necessarily immune to this either, because we can talk about an SLE. An SLE is a target, but at least the way that Prateek and I teach flow and Kanban is if a team were to miss their SLE, we don't mention that as signal that the process needs to change, that we need to sit there and say, okay, team, estimate harder or plan harder or whatever. That's why it's called a service level expectation. It's a probabilistic statement. We recognize that we are going to be wrong from time to time. Now, if it turns out over time our data is telling us something, that might suggest a change in our process. But just for a single instance of we missed our SLE, that should not be interpreted as signal either.
Yeah, and I kind of want to repeat that one thing of it's service level expectation, where we're expecting this will happen. It could, but we're also expecting the unexpected. It is possible that this will happen. This is not a service level agreement. We're not going to get fined if this doesn't happen. It's service level expectation. And yeah,
Yep.
we've talked a bunch about signal and noise, and at some point we have to talk about the real way to figure out signal and noise. But yeah, the time boxes, even your SLEs, are not the ideal way to figure out signal and noise. They can give you an indication, maybe an SLE can. I don't know if a time box can, but there are more rigorous ways, which again, that's for another episode.
Okay, well, I mean, I think we kind of beat this one to death. I know you just said the last word. Is there anything else you would like to add in terms of wrapping it up before we call this one good?
Yes, I'll add one more thing. We've been talking about Scrum. Again, this applies to anything that uses a time box. If you're doing PI planning that lasts a quarter, same thing applies. If you're doing traditional waterfall that's running 6 months or a year long or 5 year long projects, same thing applies. Anything that has a time box, not hitting the time box is not necessarily a signal.
So there you have it. We'd love to hear from you. Obviously, not about whiskey. We don't want to hear from you about that because we won't
No,
listen to you
no,
there.
we're gonna make
Um,
our own decisions on that.
what do you think about time boxes and signal? Next episode sounds like we've got a lot of material here about the next episode around how time boxes. How do I want to say this? how most people think that time boxes are helping you with complexity and risk. But what really is happening is time boxes are increasing your complexity and increasing your risk. And we might talk about that next time. And you're right, we do need to maybe have an episode, maybe where we dig a little deeper about how really say, hey, what is our voice of our process so that we can really distinguish signal from noise. That might be another one too. So leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you. Hopefully we can beat our best of four comments. So with that, for Nisha, who is over there on the floor somewhere.
She's actually moved over to
Oh,
her
there
bed
she is.
now. Yeah.
Hey, Nisha. So for Nisha, for Prateek Singh, my name is Daniel Vacanti. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in the next episode. Good night, everyone. Arbitrary